For over 18 years, I was the lead systems engineer at the Dalton Ridge nuclear power plant. I knew that facility better than the layout of my own home. Every fuse box, every radiation monitor, every subroutine in the security system, I had my fingerprints on it. My entire professional life was defined by protocols, checks, redundancies, and above all, safety. But all that changed when they brought in Adam Keene. Adam was a smooth-talking outsider with a cost-cutting mandate and a penchant for ignoring any employee with more than 10 years of experience. A former tech executive with zero nuclear background, he strutted into our control room like he'd been born there. During his first week, he hosted a culture reset meeting where he referred to our safety protocols as legacy bureaucracy and suggested we streamline critical reporting. To him, safety wasn't sacred. It was a spreadsheet line item. I tried reasoning with him, especially when he pushed to reduce our monthly emergency simulations. I told him those drills weren't optional, they saved lives. I even showed him our historical incident log, which documented 3 near-catastrophic malfunctions that were caught only because of those simulations. His response: "You're paranoid, Elliot. We're not running a Cold War facility. This isn't Chernobyl." I walked out of that meeting with a bad feeling, a deep, gnawing discomfort I hadn't felt in years. And the more changes he made, the worse it got. He disabled the redundant notification systems, claiming they were alarmist. He rerouted oversight emails from external auditors to his internal compliance team. Even our radiation badge data was now filtered before it reached the safety board. One Friday evening, around 7:45 p.m., I noticed a discrepancy in the coolant monitoring system. A subtle but persistent pressure fluctuation, not enough to trigger an automatic shutdown, but enough to raise every red flag in my mind. I initiated an immediate review, locking down access to the turbine hall to manually verify levels. Keene barged into the control room 20 minutes later with 2 security guards. "You're disrupting operations," he barked. "I'm preventing an accident," I replied. "There is no accident. You're just scared of change." I had just pulled up a thermal readout that showed an overheating anomaly in Sector D when he ordered security to remove me. I was placed on indefinite suspension for creating panic and bypassing standard managerial authority. 2 days later, I got the official termination email. I didn't even get to clear out my locker, but the worst part wasn't being fired. It was what I saw while I was backing up my personal drive. During those last hours before I was escorted out, I had pulled data from the emergency generator logs. Something was wrong with the timing circuit on one of the backup power relays. If the plant lost main power and that relay failed to activate, the cooling rods wouldn't deploy fast enough. It wasn't a theory, it was a measurable delay, and it was being masked in the logs. The plant's main system had been tampered with. It took me 3 sleepless nights to decrypt the raw logs I had archived and build a model that confirmed what I suspected. Someone had reprogrammed the failover triggers to reduce sensitivity, likely to meet uptime quotas. And if a blackout hit, the rods wouldn't drop in time. I knew exactly who would have ordered that change, but since I was no longer employed there, I couldn't raise the alarm internally. So I went external. I sent a comprehensive report to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I included time-stamped logs, code comparisons, and even internal email headers I'd flagged. And then I waited. For 3 weeks, nothing. Until one Monday morning at 6:15 a.m., I got a knock on the door. 2 men in suits. "Mr. Elliot Grant," one said, showing his badge. "We're with the Department of Energy, Office of Nuclear Security." They asked me to walk them through my findings. I spent 4 hours explaining every piece of data, how Keene had bypassed the failover parameters, how certain inspection reports had been falsified. They took my laptop, thanked me, then vanished. 2 weeks later, the news broke. The Dalton Ridge facility had been shut down for an urgent, unplanned review by federal investigators. Staff had been placed on administrative leave. The plant's operating license was under threat of suspension. A whistleblower had exposed serious protocol violations endangering national safety. They didn't name me, but I didn't need them to, because I got a phone call from Keene. He left a message. "You smug, outdated, click." He didn't know I still had access to the legacy encryption keys until the feds asked for a full digital audit of past software modifications, and I handed over a flash drive with every tampered line of code, traced straight back to his admin credentials. He thought firing me would erase the problem. All he did was leave a bigger footprint. The day I received the official subpoena to testify in front of the Department of Energy's investigative board, I wasn't surprised. I had been waiting for it, not out of pride or revenge, but because I knew what I'd witnessed, and more importantly, I knew what I'd prevented. Keene, meanwhile, had gone radio silent. No LinkedIn updates, no public statements. His office was locked down by federal agents within 3 days of my anonymous tip. I later learned that when they came in, they found shredded documents in the bathroom trash, a wiped laptop, and a team of terrified engineers with NDA contracts shaking in their hands. But data doesn't lie, and I had plenty of it. I had spent 25 years understanding the rhythm of that plant, not just how it functioned on paper, but how it behaved when something was off. A subtle hum from one turbine when pressure fluctuated. The slight lag in a sensor calibration when someone had tinkered without authorization. Things an outsider, especially a cocky executive with a management degree, would never notice. Keene called me old school. I called it experience. When I walked into the hearing room, flanked by legal counsel and greeted by a board of senior officials and nuclear safety specialists, I felt something I hadn't felt since my first day as a junior engineer. Nerves. But I pushed through. I laid it all out. Charts, logs, reports, internal communications that proved Keene had overridden emergency shutdown protocols just to shorten reactor cooldown time. All to meet absurd efficiency quotas he set without technical approval. His motivations, bonuses, performance metrics, executive innovation. My proof, every keystroke, every code update time-stamped and linked back to his admin credentials. I had screen captures of his override commands, backed-up logs stored on a private partitioned server. He thought he'd buried it all under admin-only access. What he didn't know was that I wrote the access architecture in 2007. The fallout was catastrophic for him. His name was scrubbed from every DOE project. His license was suspended. The plant's parent company launched an internal review of every executive-level decision made in the last 5 years. Their stock dropped by 18% in a week. Ironically, I became the center of a different storm, this one of respect. The federal agents didn't just validate my concerns. They invited me to be part of a newly formed advisory board on nuclear safety ethics and operations, a board that would help rewrite the standards for digital oversight and manual verification. They called it the Elliott Protocol. Funny how that works. I didn't take the role to be vindicated. I did it because I knew that without old-school watchdogs like me, the new breed of fast-talking, results-chasing executives would burn holes into the earth and blame the blueprints. We needed someone who remembered what it meant to be accountable, not just to bosses, but to the people who lived near the perimeter fences, who had no idea what kind of gamble was being played behind those reinforced concrete walls. A few months later, I was invited to speak at the Global Nuclear Safety Forum in Vienna. I stood in front of 300 engineers, executives, and government officials, and told them exactly how close Dalton Ridge came to disaster. Safety isn't a nuisance, it's not a checkbox, and it's not outdated. Safety is science, and so is accountability. If your innovation doesn't come with both, it's not innovation, it's a time bomb. The room gave me a standing ovation. Meanwhile, Keene was busy fighting legal charges and dodging interviews. I heard he tried to start a tech consulting firm, but no one wanted a scandalized ex-nuclear CEO who tampered with safety logs. Last I heard, he moved to another state and was working on an industrial automation blog. The comments were disabled. Me? I found peace, Not in revenge, but in legacy. I didn't need to destroy Keen. I just had to tell the truth. The rest unfolded exactly how it was meant to. They fired me for being too careful. Turns out, careful was the only thing that saved them from catastrophe. And that's one thing even innovation can't fake.